The sound of ripping fabric echoed through the memorial gymnasium as Connor Blake's hands tore at Maya Chun's swim team uniform, his cruel laughter mixing with the jeers of his friends. What he didn't know was that beneath Maya's quiet exterior lay 8 years of brutal Muay Thai training, and in exactly 3 seconds, his world was about to shatter along with his nose. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning October rain drummed against the tall Gothic windows of Lincoln Preparatory Academy as Maya Chun hurried through the mahogany-paneled hallways, her wet hair still dripping from swim practice. At 17, Maya possessed a delicate beauty that seemed almost ethereal, with her petite 5'4" frame, expressive dark eyes, and the kind of graceful movements that made her seem like she was floating rather than walking. Her mixed heritage gave her features an exotic quality that drew attention, but Maya had perfected the art of deflection, always choosing oversized hoodies, keeping her eyes down, and speaking in whispers when absolutely necessary. Lincoln Prep wasn't just any school, it was the kind of institution where senators sent their children, where million-dollar donations bought new library wings, and where your family's net worth determined your social standing more than your character. Maya's parents, both hard-working immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give their daughter the best education possible, stretched their finances to the breaking point to afford the tuition. Dr. Linda Chun worked double shifts as a radiologist, while her husband David managed his small accounting firm, both knowing that Maya's scholarship covered only half the astronomical fees. Maya clutched her waterlogged physics textbook closer to her chest as she navigated the crowded hallway, desperate to reach her locker without incident. She had learned to read the social currents of Lincoln Prep like a survival guide, knowing exactly which routes to take, which corners to avoid, and most importantly, how to become invisible when certain people were around. The morning had already been challenging enough without adding any unnecessary drama to her day. She was almost at her destination when the conversations around her suddenly died, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that she recognized all too well. Heavy footsteps echoed on the marble floor behind her, accompanied by the confident laughter that made every nerve in her body tense. Maya didn't need to turn around to know who was approaching, but some masochistic part of her brain forced her to glance over her shoulder anyway. Connor Blake strode down the hallway like he owned not just the school but the entire world, which in many ways he did. At 6 feet 2 inches tall, with perfectly styled blonde hair, and the kind of athletic build that came from elite personal trainers and expensive supplements, Connor embodied everything Lincoln Prep represented. As captain of the lacrosse team, and son of Judge Harold Blake, one of Connecticut's most powerful legal figures, Connor had never encountered a problem that Daddy's money or influence couldn't solve. His ice blue eyes scanned the hallway with the predatory gaze of someone who viewed other people as either useful or entertaining, and Maya had the sinking feeling she was about to become the latter. Flanking him were his constant companions, Derek Walsh and Austin Miller, both star athletes who had learned early that their social survival depended entirely on staying in Connor's good graces. Derek, a hockey player with a perpetual sneer, served as Connor's unofficial enforcer, while Austin, tall and lanky from the basketball team, acted as the group's audience, always ready with appreciative laughter at Connor's cruelest jokes. Together, they formed Lincoln Prep's unofficial ruling council, a trio of entitled privilege that left destruction in their wake. Maya quickened her pace, hoping against hope that they would pass by without noticing her. But luck had never been her ally when it came to Connor Blake. His voice boomed across the hallway with the kind of artificial charm that fooled adults, but made students' skin crawl. The way he said her name, drawing out each syllable like he was savoring some private joke, made Maya's stomach turn with a mixture of dread and barely contained rage. Students pressed themselves against lockers and ducked into classrooms, having learned from experience that being anywhere near Connor when he was focused on a target was dangerous territory. Maya had witnessed his handiwork before, had seen how he systematically dismantled anyone who caught his negative attention, but she had always managed to stay beneath his radar, until now. The hallway felt like it was stretching infinitely as Maya tried to reach her locker, each step feeling heavier than the last. Her swim bag, usually light after morning practice, now felt like it weighed 100 pounds. More importantly, hidden beneath her innocent exterior and carefully maintained reputation as Lincoln Prep's quietest student, lay a secret that even her closest friend Jessica didn't fully understand. Every evening for the past 8 years, while her classmates attended social events and shopping excursions, Maya had been in her uncle's gym in Hartford's Rough East Side, learning the devastating art of Muay Thai and the ground techniques of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Uncle Tommy Chun had been a professional fighter before a career-ending injury forced him into training others, and he had recognized something fierce in his niece's spirit despite her gentle demeanor. Under his guidance, Maya had developed the kind of skills that would have shocked her prep school classmates, the ability to end fights before they truly began. But she had kept this part of herself buried beneath layers of carefully constructed vulnerability. Now, as Connor's footsteps grew closer and his voice took on that dangerous edge she had heard him use with other victims, Maya felt something stirring deep in her chest. Not fear, exactly, but a cold awareness that her two worlds were about to collide in ways she had spent years trying to prevent. The quiet girl who wrote poetry and painted watercolors was about to meet the fighter who could break bones with surgical precision, and Maya wasn't sure which version of herself would emerge from whatever Connor had planned. Connor's approach felt like watching the storm system move across the horizon, inevitable and destructive. Maya reached her locker and began fumbling with the combination, her fingers trembling slightly as the numbers blurred together. Behind her, she could hear other students making hasty exits, the hallway rapidly emptying as word spread that Connor Blake was on the hunt. The smart ones knew to disappear when trouble was brewing. Maya Chun. Connor's voice was deceptively friendly as he came to a stop directly behind her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with the protein shake he consumed religiously after every workout. Just the person I was looking for. Maya forced herself to turn around slowly, keeping her expression neutral despite the warning bells screaming in her head. Connor stood with his arms crossed, that perfectly practiced smile plastered across his face, the one that had charmed teachers and parents for years, while hiding the calculating predator beneath. Derek and Austin flanked him like bodyguards, their presence turning the simple interaction into something far more threatening. "Can I help you with something, Connor?" Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt, though she kept her tone respectful. Years of watching Connor's interactions had taught her that any sign of disrespect or attitude would only escalate whatever game he was playing. Connor's smile widened, but it never reached his eyes. "Actually, you can. See, I've been thinking about the winter formal coming up next month, and I've decided that you're going to be my date." The casual way he announced it, like he was ordering lunch rather than asking another human being to accompany him to the most important social event of the semester, made Maya's blood run cold. This wasn't a request or even an invitation, it was a declaration, spoken with the absolute confidence of someone who had never been denied anything in his privileged life. Maya had heard about Connor's approach to dating before. He didn't ask girls to events. He selected them like accessories, choosing whoever would enhance his image or provide the most entertainment. The girls who accepted his invitations often found themselves paraded around like trophies before being discarded once Connor grew bored. Those who tried to maintain any independence quickly learned that Connor Blake didn't share well. "That's very flattering," Maya said carefully, her mind racing as she tried to navigate this minefield. "But I'm not really planning to attend the winter formal." Connor's eyebrows rose slightly, as if the concept of someone not wanting to attend the social event of the year was incomprehensible to him. Not planning to attend? Maya, this is the winter formal we're talking about. Everyone who matters will be there. My father has reserved the entire ballroom at the Millbrook Country Club. There will be photographers from the society pages. Derek snickered from his position at Connor's left shoulder. Yeah, it's not like you have other options anyway. When was the last time anyone even talked to you? The cruel observation stung because it contained enough truth to hurt. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya had deliberately cultivated her invisible status at Lincoln Prep, but it also meant she had very few genuine friendships. Most students saw her as the quiet scholarship kid who didn't belong in their world of designer clothes and summer homes in the Hamptons. I'm sure you'll have no trouble finding someone who would love to go with you, Maya said, closing her locker and slinging her swim bag over her shoulder. There are plenty of girls who would be thrilled to accompany you. Connor stepped closer, invading her personal space in a way that made several nearby students stop pretending to mind their own business. I'm not interested in plenty of girls, Maya. I'm interested in you. You have this whole mysterious, untouchable thing going on, and I find that intriguing. The way he said intriguing made Maya's skin crawl. She recognized the tone of someone who viewed other people as puzzles to be solved or challenges to be conquered. Connor wasn't interested in her as a person. He was interested in her as a project, something exotic and different to add to his collection. I appreciate the invitation, Maya said, trying to step around him, but my answer is no. I'm sure you understand. For a moment, Connor looked genuinely confused, as if Maya had just spoken in a foreign language. His perfect smile faltered, replaced by something darker and more honest. In his 17 years of existence, Connor Blake had never encountered the word no applied to something he actually wanted. His parents had bought him everything from his first car to his acceptance into Lincoln Prep. Teachers overlooked his academic shortcuts because of his father's donations. Girls competed for his attention because dating Connor Blake meant instant elevation in the social hierarchy. I don't think you heard me correctly, Connor said, his voice dropping to a lower register that he probably thought was persuasive, but came across as menacing. I said you're going to be my date to the winter formal. This isn't really a discussion. Maya felt something cold and familiar settle in her chest, the same sensation she experienced in her uncle's gym when an opponent underestimated her abilities. Connor Blake had just made the fundamental mistake of assuming that because Maya appeared weak, she actually was weak. He had confused her deliberate invisibility with genuine powerlessness. And I said no, Maya replied, her voice gaining a steel edge that surprised even her. I don't care who your father is or how much money your family has donated to this school. I'm not an accessory you can just claim because you've decided you want me. The hallway had gone completely silent now, students frozen in place as they witnessed something unprecedented at Lincoln Prep. Nobody talked to Connor Blake like that. Nobody refused him so directly, especially not someone like Maya Chun, who ranked somewhere near the bottom of the school's social hierarchy. Connor's face flushed red, the kind of angry color that appeared when someone utterly unaccustomed to rejection finally encountered it. Behind him, Derek and Austin exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to react to this breach in the natural order of their universe. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Connor's voice had risen enough to echo off the hallway walls. My family practically built this school. One phone call from my father and your little scholarship disappears. Your parents' business licenses get reviewed. Your whole family's future in this town becomes very uncertain. The threats hung in the air like poison, each word carefully chosen to remind Maya of exactly how precarious her position really was. Connor wasn't just threatening her. He was threatening everything her parents had worked for, everything they had sacrificed to give her this opportunity. Maya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded every sparring session, the same heightened awareness that had served her well in countless training fights. But this wasn't her uncle's gym, and Connor Blake wasn't wearing protective gear. This was Lincoln Preparatory Academy, where battles were fought with social media posts and family connections rather than fists and feet. "I understand perfectly who you are," Maya said quietly, shouldering her bag and meeting Connor's furious gaze without flinching. "The question is whether you understand who I am." With that, she walked away, leaving Connor Blake standing in the hallway for the first time in his life, publicly rejected and humiliated in front of an audience of his peers. As Maya disappeared around the corner, she could hear the whispered conversations already beginning, the sound of a story that would spread through Lincoln Prep like wildfire. She had no illusions about what would happen next. Connor Blake's ego wouldn't allow this rejection to stand, and his resources for retaliation were virtually unlimited. But Maya Chun had spent 8 years preparing for fights, even if she had never expected the most important one to happen in the hallways of an elite prep school. The first sign of retaliation came during third-period chemistry, when Maya discovered someone had vandalized her lab station. Her carefully organized notebook lay open with "stuck up" scrawled across her molecular diagrams in thick black marker, and her expensive graphing calculator had mysteriously disappeared from her backpack. Mr. Harrison, the chemistry teacher, barely glanced up from his lesson plan when Maya quietly raised her hand to report the vandalism. "Equipment gets misplaced all the time, Miss Chun. Perhaps you should be more careful with your belongings," he said dismissively before turning back to the whiteboard. Maya noticed several students exchanging knowing glances, and the realization hit her like a physical blow. Word of her confrontation with Connor had already spread through the school's intricate gossip network, and battle lines were being drawn. By lunchtime, Maya's phone buzzed with notifications from an Instagram account she didn't recognize. Someone had created a fake profile using her school photo, but with cruel modifications. Digital horns had been added to her head, her eyes had been altered to look demonic, and the username read, "Maya the Snake." The bio contained a fabricated story about how she had insulted Connor's family and claimed she was too cultured for American boys, preferring to date only Ivy League material. Maya's hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments that were already flooding in. Students she barely knew were leaving messages calling her everything from pretentious to far worse slurs that made her stomach turn. The post had been shared dozens of times, each reshare adding another layer of humiliation as Lincoln Prep's student body collectively turned against her. Jessica Torres found Maya hiding in the East Wing Art Studios, hunched over her phone with tears streaming down her face. The studios were usually deserted during lunch, a sanctuary where Maya often escaped to work on her paintings when the social pressures of Lincoln Prep became overwhelming. "Maya, what happened?" Jessica asked, rushing to her friend's side. "Half the school is talking about some drama with Connor Blake." Maya wordlessly handed over her phone, watching Jessica's expression shift from confusion to anger as she read the fake profile and its accompanying comments. Jessica had always been Maya's fiercest defender, one of the few students at Lincoln Prep who genuinely didn't care about social hierarchies or family wealth. "This is absolutely disgusting," Jessica said, her voice shaking with rage. "We need to report this to Principal Morrison immediately. This is cyberbullying, and it's completely fabricated." Maya wiped her eyes and shook her head. "You know Connor's family practically owns this school. Principal Morrison isn't going to do anything that might upset Judge Blake. Besides, how do we prove Connor was behind this? The account is anonymous." Jessica's jaw clenched with frustration because she knew Maya was right. The Blake family's influence at Lincoln Prep was legendary. Judge Blake had donated the money for the new science wing. Connor's mother sat on the board of trustees, and their annual charity gala provided significant funding for the school's athletic programs. Going up against the Blake family wasn't just social suicide. It was academic suicide. The afternoon brought fresh horrors as Maya discovered that someone had been busy spreading rumors through more traditional channels. In a P-history, she overheard whispered conversations about how she had supposedly called Connor beneath her standards and claimed that American boys were too unsophisticated for someone of her background. The stories grew more elaborate with each retelling, transforming her simple rejection into an elaborate tale of elitist snobbery. During swimming practice, Maya felt the hostile stares of her teammates as she changed into her practice suit. Girls who had previously been friendly now turned away when she entered the locker room, and conversations died whenever she approached. Coach Martinez seemed oblivious to the tension, focused entirely on preparing the team for their upcoming competition against Hartford Academy. Maya threw herself into the practice with desperate intensity, using the rhythmic stroke patterns and controlled breathing to quiet the chaos in her mind. The water had always been her refuge, a place where social dynamics and family wealth meant nothing. In the pool, success was measured purely by speed and technique, qualities that couldn't be bought or inherited. But even her sanctuary wasn't safe from Connor's influence. As practice ended and the other girls headed for the showers, Maya noticed something amiss with her team bag. Someone had gone through her belongings, leaving everything slightly displaced. Her street clothes were wrinkled as if they had been deliberately rumpled, and her house keys were missing from their usual pocket. Maya's heart pounded as she searched frantically through her bag, finally finding the keys at the bottom beneath her wet towel. The message was clear. Connor's reach extended everywhere, even into spaces that should have been safe. No corner of her life at Lincoln Prep was beyond his influence. The final blow came as Maya walked to her car in the student parking lot. Her modest Honda Civic, already conspicuous among the BMWs and Mercedes that dominated the lot, had been decorated with a fresh coating of shaving cream across the windshield. Someone had used their finger to write "Princess" in the foam, complete with crude drawings that left no doubt about the message's intent. Maya stood in the gathering dusk, staring at her vandalized car while other students walked past, some snickering openly at her humiliation. A few pulled out their phones to take pictures, undoubtedly planning to add this moment to the growing collection of her public shame. She could already imagine the social media posts. Spoiled scholarship girl gets reality check, or Queen Maya's chariot needs cleaning. As she scraped the shaving cream from her windshield with an old credit card, Maya's mind drifted to her uncle's gym and the lessons he had taught her about fighting. Real combat isn't about the first punch, Uncle Tommy always said. It's about endurance. It's about who can take the most punishment and still keep fighting. Champions aren't made in moments of triumph. They're forged in moments when they want to quit, but don't. Maya had always applied those lessons to her physical training, but now she understood they extended far beyond the walls of any gym. Connor Blake thought he was breaking her spirit with his systematic campaign of humiliation, but he had no idea what kind of person he was truly dealing with. Every cruel post, every whispered rumor, every act of petty vandalism was only strengthening her resolve. The drive home through Millbrook's tree-lined streets gave Maya time to think clearly for the first time all day. Connor's strategy was becoming apparent, complete social isolation designed to force her into submission. He was using his considerable resources to turn her into a pariah, betting that the pressure would eventually become unbearable enough to make her apologize and accept his terms. What Connor didn't understand was that Maya Chun had spent her entire life as an outsider. She had navigated the challenges of being a mixed-race child in predominantly white schools, had endured the financial pressures of being a scholarship student among wealthy classmates, and had learned to find strength in solitude. If Connor Blake thought he could break her with social rejection, he had severely underestimated his opponent. Maya pulled into her family's modest driveway and sat in the car for a moment, gathering her strength before facing her parents. They had sacrificed so much to give her this opportunity at Lincoln Prep, and the last thing she wanted was to burden them with her problems. But as she looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror, Maya saw something different than the broken girl Connor probably expected to see. She saw a fighter preparing for war. The harassment campaign against Maya intensified over the following days with military precision. Connor Blake had clearly studied psychological warfare, understanding that constant, low-level attacks could be more devastating than any single dramatic confrontation. Every morning brought fresh humiliations carefully designed to chip away at Maya's resolve. Maya's locker combination had somehow been compromised, leading to daily discoveries of unpleasant surprises. Rotting fish from the biology lab appeared. In her textbooks, her expensive art supplies were stolen and replaced with broken crayons, and anonymous notes began appearing with increasingly personal attacks about her family's immigration status and financial situation. The custodial staff, many of whom received generous tips from wealthy families like the Blakes, seemed mysteriously unavailable whenever Maya reported these incidents. The digital assault expanded beyond Instagram to encompass every platform where Lincoln Prep students congregated. A fake Twitter account began posting fabricated quotes attributed to Maya, each one designed to make her appear more arrogant and out of touch. The anonymous posts claimed she had described her classmates as intellectually inferior and stated that she only socialized with people of substance, meaning those destined for prestigious universities. Maya discovered that someone had been systematically contacting her teachers with concerns about her attitude problems. Mrs. Caldwell from Advanced Placement English pulled Maya aside after class to express disappointment about reports that Maya had been showing disrespect toward other students. When Maya tried to explain that the reports were fabricated, Mrs. Caldwell's expression suggested she had already made up her mind about the situation. The most devastating blow came when Maya learned that someone had contacted the admissions office at Yale University, where she had submitted an early application. A guidance counselor mentioned in passing that they had received an inquiry about Maya's character and leadership qualities from what appeared to be a concerned alumni donor. While the counselor couldn't provide specifics, the implication was clear. Connor's family connections extended far beyond Lincoln Prep's walls. Maya's parents began noticing the change in their daughter's demeanor, though she tried desperately to hide her struggles from them. Dr. Chun commented on Maya's loss of appetite during dinner, while David Chen observed that his usually talkative daughter had become withdrawn and distracted. When they asked about school, Maya deflected their concerns with vague responses about academic pressure and college applications. The situation at home became more complicated when Maya's father received an unexpected visit from a building inspector who claimed to be conducting a routine safety review of his accounting office. The inspector spent hours examining every detail of the modest space, looking for violations that could result in expensive fines or license complications. David Chun had operated his business for 15 years without any regulatory problems, making the sudden scrutiny suspiciously convenient. Maya knew immediately that Connor's threats about affecting her family's livelihood weren't empty. Judge Blake's influence in local government was extensive, and a simple phone call could trigger investigations that would cost her parents thousands of dollars in legal fees and lost business. The message was unmistakable. Maya's refusal to submit was endangering her entire family's stability. The psychological pressure began affecting Maya's performance in the pool, her one remaining sanctuary at Lincoln Prep. During practice, she found herself struggling to maintain her usual speed and precision, her mind too occupied with survival strategies to focus on technique. Coach Martinez noticed the decline immediately, calling Maya aside after a particularly disappointing practice session. "Chun, what's going on with you lately?" Coach Martinez asked, her expression mixing concern with frustration. "Your times have dropped significantly, and you seem completely unfocused in the water. The regional championships are in 3 weeks, and I need to know if you're committed to this team." Maya wanted desperately to explain the real reason for her distraction, but she knew that Coach Martinez's position depended on maintaining good relationships with influential families. The swim program received substantial funding from parent donations, and alienating the Blake family could jeopardize the entire team's future. "I'm just dealing with some personal issues," Maya said quietly. "I'll get it together before regionals." Coach Martinez studied Maya's face for a moment, perhaps recognizing signs of distress that went beyond typical teenage problems. "If you need to talk to someone, the school counselor is available. But I can't afford to have distracted swimmers. On this team, Chun, either figure out how to manage your personal life, or consider whether competitive swimming is the right fit for you right now." The threat of losing her spot on the swim team added another layer of pressure to Maya's already overwhelming situation. Swimming wasn't just her passion. It was also crucial for her college applications. Several universities had expressed interest in recruiting her, and losing her athletic achievements would severely damage her chances of admission to competitive programs. Maya's isolation at school became nearly complete as Connor's influence spread through every social circle. Students who had previously been neutral began actively avoiding her, unwilling to risk association with someone who had earned Connor Blake's enmity. Even teachers seemed to view her with suspicion, having been fed a steady diet of fabricated complaints about her attitude and behavior. The only bright spot in Maya's increasingly dark world remained her friendship with Jessica Torres, though even that relationship faced mounting pressure. Jessica's parents, both successful lawyers who moved in the same social circles as the Blake family, began questioning their daughter's loyalty to Maya. During a family dinner, they suggested that Jessica might want to distance herself from her friend to avoid any negative associations. "The Blake family is very influential in this community," Jessica's mother explained during what was supposed to be a casual conversation. "It might be wise to avoid getting caught up in whatever drama Maya has created with their son." Jessica defended Maya fiercely, explaining that the situation wasn't Maya's fault and that Connor Blake was clearly engaging in systematic harassment. However, her parents' concerns reflected the broader community sentiment, challenging the Blake family was simply too dangerous for most people to risk. Maya spent her evenings at Uncle Tommy's gym with renewed intensity, channeling her frustration and anger into increasingly brutal training sessions. Her uncle noticed the change immediately, observing how Maya attacked the heavy bag with a ferocity that went beyond normal athletic conditioning. "Something's eating at you, kid," Uncle Tommy said after watching Maya destroy a series of focus mitts with devastating combinations. "You want to talk about what's got you so wound up?" Maya hesitated, knowing that Uncle Tommy had spent years trying to keep her away from real violence, encouraging her to use martial arts for discipline and self-confidence rather than aggression. But the pressure from Connor's campaign was reaching a breaking point, and Maya could feel something dangerous building inside her. "Just school stuff," Maya said, unwrapping her hands after another punishing session. "Politics and social drama." Uncle Tommy studied his niece's face with the practiced eye of someone who had seen fighters push to their limits. "Remember what I've always taught you about real fighting, Maya. It's not about anger or revenge. It's about protecting yourself and others when you have no other choice. But once you cross that line, once you use these skills in the real world, everything changes." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of his words while also recognizing that her situation at Lincoln Prep was rapidly approaching the point where she might have no other choice. Connor Blake's escalating campaign showed no signs of stopping, and Maya could sense that he was building towards something more dramatic than anonymous social media posts and petty vandalism. As she drove home through Millbrook's quiet streets, Maya made a decision that would have surprised anyone who knew her reputation as Lincoln Prep's most invisible student. She was done running, done hiding, and done allowing Connor Blake to control her life through fear and intimidation. Tomorrow she would start fighting back. The trap had been meticulously planned with the calculated precision that Connor Blake applied to everything he wanted to destroy. For 3 days he had observed Maya's patterns after swim practice, noting how she always stayed late to complete extra training when the memorial gymnasium emptied of students and faculty. Coach Martinez had been strategically called away to handle a fabricated emergency with the athletic department budget, leaving the entire pool complex completely deserted except for Maya finishing her evening routine. Maya pulled herself from the chlorinated water after completing her final set of butterfly strokes, her muscles burning from the punishing workout she had subjected herself to. The pool had become her only remaining sanctuary at Lincoln Prep, the single location where Connor's psychological warfare couldn't penetrate her defenses. She moved toward the bleachers where her towel waited, water streaming from her navy blue team swimsuit as she prepared for what she hoped would be another successful escape from the building without incident. The peaceful silence exploded into chaos when the gymnasium's main entrance doors burst open with a thunderous crash that reverberated through every corner of the cavernous space. Connor Blake emerged through the doorway like a conquering general surveying his battlefield, his perfectly styled blonde hair catching the overhead lights as his ice-blue eyes scanned the pool area with predatory satisfaction. Derek Walsh and Austin Miller flanked him with military precision, their athletic frames blocking any potential escape routes while their expressions radiated the kind of cruel anticipation that preceded acts of serious violence. Nathan Price followed behind the trio, his expensive camera equipment already activated and recording, the small red light blinking like a malevolent eye in the gathering shadows. Maya's stomach plummeted as she realized the full scope of her predicament. She was completely alone in an isolated section of the school with 4 boys who had clearly spent considerable time planning whatever horror they intended to inflict upon her. The emergency exits had been chained shut hours earlier as part of the building's standard security protocol, and the main entrance was now effectively sealed by Derek's imposing presence. Maya's gym bag sat tantalizingly close to the locker room entrance, but Austin had already positioned himself to intercept any movement in that direction. She was trapped as completely as any animal in a cage, with nowhere to run and no one to hear her scream. Well, 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 Connor's voice carried across the water with the smooth confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for his actions. Look what we have discovered here. The mysterious and untouchable Maya Chun, all alone in her private little kingdom. Maya wrapped her towel around herself with deliberate calm, refusing to show the terror that was threatening to overwhelm her rational thinking. She began moving slowly toward her belongings, knowing that her phone was buried somewhere in her gym bag and represented her only potential connection to the outside world. But every step she took was being carefully monitored by Connor's accomplices, each of whom had been assigned specific responsibilities in whatever twisted scenario was about to unfold. You know, Maya, Connor continued, beginning to circle her with the lazy confidence of a predator who had successfully cornered his prey. I've demonstrated remarkable patience with your attitude over these past several weeks. One provided you with numerous opportunities to correct your behavior, to acknowledge that publicly humiliating Connor Blake was the most catastrophic mistake of your pathetic little life. But instead of showing proper remorse, you've remained stubborn and defiant. That unfortunate chapter of your existence ends tonight. Nathan adjusted his camera angle to capture Maya's face more clearly, the mechanical whirring of the device adding an ominous soundtrack to Connor's monologue. Maya felt a chill of absolute horror as she understood that whatever degradation Connor had planned was going to be permanently documented, probably uploaded to every social media platform where Her destruction could be witnessed and celebrated by the entire Lincoln Prep community. Here's exactly how this evening is going to proceed, Connor announced with the theatrical flair of someone who had rehearsed this moment countless times in his imagination. You're going to get down on your knees right here on this wet pool deck, and you're going to look directly into Nathan's camera lens. You're going to apologize for every single disrespectful word you've ever spoken, every arrogant gesture you've ever made, and every moment you've spent thinking you were somehow equal to your social superiors. Maya's grip on her towel tightened as Connor's voice took on an increasingly dangerous edge, his words painting a picture of humiliation so complete that recovery would be virtually impossible. This wasn't merely about forcing an apology. This was about psychological annihilation designed to break her spirit so thoroughly that she would never again possess the courage to challenge anyone's authority. But that's just the beginning of your education, Connor continued, his smile becoming increasingly predatory with each passing second. After you've properly debased yourself with your apologies, you're going to beg me to forgive your inexcusable behavior. You're going to plead with me to give you another chance, and then you're going to beg me to honor you with my presence. At the winter formal, Derek's harsh laughter echoed off the tiled walls as he savored Maya's obvious distress. And you're going to mean every single word of it, princess. We'll be able to tell if you're just going through the motions. And what happens if I refuse to participate in this sick fantasy of yours? Maya asked, her voice steadier than she had expected despite the terror coursing through her bloodstream. Connor's expression transformed into something genuinely monstrous, revealing the sociopathic nature that had always lurked beneath his carefully cultivated golden boy image. That's where tonight becomes really educational for you, Maya. You see, we've been developing some serious concerns about your conduct around other female students. Reports of inappropriate behavior in the locker rooms, disturbing incidents involving unwanted touching and sexual harassment of your teammates. Austin stepped closer to Maya, his intentions becoming horrifyingly clear as he spoke. Yeah, we're going to need to conduct a thorough investigation of your behavior right here and now. Make sure you're not concealing anything suspicious under that swimsuit of yours. The full scope of Connor's plan crashed over Maya like a tsunami of pure terror. They weren't just intending to humiliate her with forced apologies and degrading performances. They planned to sexually assault her while recording every moment, then use the footage to destroy her reputation permanently. Connor's twisted scheme would simultaneously victimize her and brand her as a predator, creating a narrative so devastating that her entire future would be obliterated. You're absolutely disgusting, Maya said, her voice gaining unexpected strength, as righteous anger began to override her fear. All four of you. This stopped being about a dance or your wounded ego weeks ago. This is about power and control and sexual violence, and I will never give you any of those things. Connor's carefully maintained facade finally shattered completely, revealing the seething rage that had been building since Maya's first public rejection weeks earlier. You don't get to make decisions anymore, Maya. You had multiple opportunities to handle this situation like a reasonable person. Now we're going to handle it our way. He lunged forward with startling speed and violence, his hands immediately going for Maya's towel and yanking it away with brutal force that sent her stumbling backward toward the pool's edge. But Connor didn't stop with the towel. His fingers immediately hooked into the straps of her swimsuit with clear intent to strip her completely naked while Nathan documented every second of her violation for posterity. The sound of tearing fabric filled the air as Connor's powerful grip found purchase on Maya's team uniform, the high-quality nylon beginning to give way under his determined assault. Maya felt the cool gymnasium air against her exposed skin as her swimsuit started to fail. Connor's face twisted with triumphant anticipation as he prepared to complete her total degradation. Derek moved to assist Connor in restraining Maya while Austin positioned himself to prevent any escape attempts. their coordination suggesting they had practiced the scenario multiple times. Nathan continued filming with steady hands, his camera capturing every detail of what they believed would be Maya's complete destruction and submission. But Connor Blake had just made the most catastrophic miscalculation of his privileged existence. In his obsession with psychological dominance and sexual conquest, he had failed completely to investigate who Maya Chun actually was beneath her carefully constructed persona of vulnerability. He had no comprehension that the shy, quiet girl he was attempting to assault had spent the last 8 years systematically transforming herself into something infinitely more dangerous than his worst nightmares. The instant Connor's hands made contact with her swimsuit, Maya's body exploded into motion with a precision and lethality that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. Her training took over completely. 8 years of disciplined practice condensing into a sequence of movements so fluid and devastating that her attackers barely had time to register what was happening to them. Maya's left hand shot upward like a striking cobra, her fingers wrapping around Connor's wrist with crushing force that immediately cut off circulation to his hand. The grip she employed was a specialized technique from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, designed to control an opponent's movement while setting up more devastating attacks. Simultaneously, her right elbow drove into Connor's solar plexus with the surgical accuracy of someone who had practiced the technique thousands of times against heavy bags and sparring partners. The combination represented textbook Muay Thai executed with championship-level precision. Connor's eyes bulged in shock and agony as every molecule of air rushed out of his lungs in a single whooshing gasp. His grip on Maya's swimsuit immediately loosening as his nervous system struggled to process the catastrophic damage being inflicted upon his body. But Maya's assault was far from finished. Before Connor could even begin to comprehend what had happened to him, she pivoted smoothly on her left foot and drove her right knee upward into his exposed midsection with bone-crushing force. The impact lifted Connor's entire body off the ground for a split second, his face cycling through various shades of purple as his diaphragm went into violent spasms. "My name is Maya Chun," she announced with crystal clarity, her voice carrying absolute authority as Connor collapsed to his knees on the wet pool deck, making horrible gasping sounds like a fish dying on dry land. "I have been training in Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since I was 9 years old. I compete in regional and national junior tournaments under an assumed name to protect my identity, and I have never lost a single match in 8 years of competition." Derek Walsh charged at Maya from her left side, apparently believing he could overwhelm her with brute force while she was focused on Connor's destruction. His strategy might have succeeded against an ordinary teenage girl, but Maya's peripheral vision and spatial awareness had been honed through years of sparring against multiple opponents simultaneously. She heard Derek's heavy footsteps splashing through the puddles on the pool deck long before he came within striking distance, his approach as subtle as a freight train. Maya spun to face him with the fluid grace of a dancer, her hands rising into perfect defensive position as Derek's clumsy tackle attempt found nothing but empty air where she had been standing milliseconds before. Maya sidestepped Derek's charge with the effortless precision of a professional matador avoiding an enraged bull, using his own momentum and gravity against him to redirect his trajectory straight toward the deep end of the pool. Her technique was flawless, requiring minimal effort while maximizing the devastating impact of Derek's inevitable collision with the water. Derek hit the pool surface with a tremendous splash that sent waves crashing against all 4 walls of the swimming area, his heavy frame disappearing completely beneath the surface before bobbing back up like a cork, sputtering and completely disoriented. The impact had knocked every bit of air from his lungs, and his waterlogged clothes made swimming nearly impossible as he struggled desperately to reach the pool's edge without drowning. Austin Miller stood frozen at the opposite end of the pool area, his face pale with terror as he watched his two companions lying completely disabled by a girl they had all dismissed as harmless. Years of bullying smaller, weaker students had not prepared him for an opponent who possessed professional-level fighting skills and the confidence to use them without hesitation. Every survival instinct Austin possessed screamed at him to run immediately, but masculine pride and the fear of appearing cowardly in front of his friends compelled him to advance despite the overwhelming evidence that he was about to become Maya's next victim. He moved forward with obvious reluctance, his hands raised in what he probably thought was a threatening manner, but actually revealed his complete ignorance of basic fighting techniques. Maya waited with infinite patience as Austin approached, her stance appearing relaxed and non-threatening, while actually representing a perfect combat position that could transition into offense or defense within fractions of a second. Uncle Tommy had always emphasized that patience and timing were far more valuable than raw aggression, and Maya now demonstrated the wisdom of those lessons. When Austin finally committed to his attack, swinging wildly with his right fist in a clumsy haymaker aimed at Maya's head, she showcased why technical skill and years of training would always triumph over size and brute strength. Austin's punch missed her face by several inches, his momentum carrying him forward into a position of complete vulnerability that Maya exploited with clinical efficiency. Maya's response was swift and merciless, a perfectly executed leg sweep that sent Austin's feet flying out from under him, followed immediately by a controlled strike to a specific pressure point on his neck that left him conscious, but completely paralyzed from the shoulders down. The technique was advanced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, requiring precise knowledge of human anatomy and the confidence to apply it under extreme stress. Austin crashed to the pool deck with a sickening thud, his head bouncing off the wet tiles with enough force to produce a sound that echoed throughout the gymnasium. He lay there making soft groaning noises, his eyes wide with shock and terror as he realized he couldn't move any part of his body below his neck. The paralysis would be temporary, but Austin had no way of knowing that crucial detail. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 60 seconds from beginning to end, but Nathan Price had captured every devastating moment through his camera lens, his hands shaking so badly that the footage resembled an earthquake documentary. Maya turned to face the terrified photographer, her expression completely calm, but carrying an unmistakably dangerous edge that made Nathan's bladder feel uncomfortably full. "Nathan Price," Maya said, walking slowly toward him while casually adjusting her torn swimsuit to maintain her modesty, "you currently have exactly 2 choices available to you, and I strongly suggest you choose wisely." Nathan's face had drained of all color as he fumbled desperately with his camera controls, his fingers trembling so violently he could barely operate the basic functions. Sweat poured down his forehead despite the cool temperature in the gymnasium, and his breathing had become rapid and shallow. "Your first option is to delete every single second of that footage immediately, and help me explain to the police exactly what happened here tonight when they arrive." Maya continued in a conversational tone that somehow made her words even more terrifying. "Your second option is to attempt to flee with that evidence, in which case I will have to assume you were a willing and enthusiastic participant in their plan to sexually assault me." The implication hung in the air like a death sentence. Nathan understood perfectly that Maya possessed the skills to incapacitate him as easily as she had destroyed his 3 companions, and that running would only delay the inevitable while making his eventual fate significantly worse. "I swear on my mother's life that I had absolutely no idea what they were really planning," Nathan stammered, his voice cracking like a prepubescent boy's. "Connor just told me to bring my camera and film you making some kind of apology. I thought it was just going to be typical bullying stuff, not attempted rape." "Delete the footage," Maya instructed firmly, "and then call 911 immediately." Nathan's hands moved with desperate speed as he accessed the camera's memory and began purging every file from the evening. his face a mask of concentration and terror. When he finished, he looked up at Maya with pleading eyes, clearly hoping for some sign of forgiveness or mercy. Maya tossed him her cell phone, which he caught clumsily with hands that were still shaking uncontrollably. "Tell them we need police officers, paramedics, and probably detectives at Lincoln Preparatory Academy's Memorial Gymnasium immediately. Tell them there has been an attempted sexual assault and that multiple people require medical attention." As Nathan made the emergency call with a voice that kept breaking with stress, Maya began gathering her belongings and putting on her street clothes over her damaged swimsuit. She moved with deliberate calm, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether justice prevailed or whether Connor's family connections would somehow minimize the consequences of his crimes. The first police car arrived within 7 minutes, followed quickly by paramedics and additional officers who had been briefed about the serious nature of the incident. Detective Sarah Morrison, no relation to the Blake family despite sharing their surname, took charge of the scene immediately and began conducting preliminary interviews, while evidence technicians photographed everything and collected physical samples. Maya provided a detailed and coherent statement about the entire incident, from Connor's initial harassment campaign through the evening's attempted assault and her subsequent self-defense actions. Her account was precise and factual, demonstrating the kind of clear thinking under pressure that impressed the investigating officers. Connor had regained consciousness but remained doubled over in severe pain. His breathing still labored from the damage to his solar plexus. When Detective Morrison attempted to question him, Connor immediately demanded to speak with his father's attorney and refused to provide any statement about the evening's events. Derek had been pulled from the pool by paramedics and was being treated for near drowning, his waterlogged condition and obvious disorientation making him incapable of coherent communication. Austin remained paralyzed and terrified, though medical examination confirmed that his condition was temporary and would resolve within several hours. Nathan's cooperation with investigators proved crucial in establishing the premeditated nature of Connor's plan. The deleted footage was recovered through digital forensics techniques, providing irrefutable evidence of the attempted assault and Connor's confession of his previous harassment campaign against Maya. Within 48 hours, Connor Blake found himself facing multiple felony charges including attempted sexual assault, criminal harassment, conspiracy to commit assault, and violation of Maya's civil rights. Derek and Austin were charged as accessories to sexual assault, while Nathan received immunity in exchange for his full cooperation with prosecutors. Judge Harold Blake's political influence, which had seemed so overwhelming just days before, proved utterly worthless against the mountain of physical evidence and witness testimony that emerged during the investigation. The Blake family's reputation in Millbrook was permanently destroyed as details of Connor's systematic abuse of other students became public knowledge through court filings and media coverage. Maya's transformation from victim to victor became a phenomenon that extended far beyond Lincoln Prep's walls, inspiring hundreds of other students throughout Connecticut to come forward with their own stories of harassment and assault. She established a comprehensive self-defense program that expanded to serve multiple school districts, teaching young people that true strength came not from hiding their abilities, but from developing the confidence and skills necessary to protect themselves and others. The program Maya created emphasized that martial arts training was about far more than physical techniques. It was about building the inner strength and self-confidence necessary to recognize dangerous situations and respond appropriately. Students learned not just how to fight, but when fighting was necessary and how to de-escalate conflicts whenever possible. Uncle Tommy watched the media coverage of his niece's story with tremendous pride and satisfaction, seeing his years of patient instruction vindicated in the most public way imaginable. The quiet girl who had spent countless hours learning to control her body and mind had finally been forced to use those skills in the real world, And she had demonstrated that proper training could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. Lincoln. Preparatory Academy implemented sweeping policy changes in the wake of the scandal, including mandatory consent education for all students, anonymous reporting systems for harassment incidents, and a zero-tolerance approach to any form of sexual misconduct. The school also hired additional counselors and established partnerships with local law enforcement to ensure that future incidents would be handled swiftly and appropriately. Coach Martinez, who had been unknowingly manipulated into leaving Maya alone that night, became one of her strongest advocates and supporters. She helped develop new athletic programs that emphasized respect, personal safety, and mutual support alongside competitive excellence, ensuring that the pool area would never again become a location where students could be isolated and victimized. Maya's story continued to inspire young people around the world who found themselves facing bullies, predators, and those who sought to abuse their power. She had proven that victims could become victors, that the powerless could discover their own strength, and that sometimes the most important battles were fought not in tournaments or competitions, but in the moments when someone decided they would no longer accept being treated as less than human. The shy beauty who had once desperately tried to disappear into the background had found her voice in the most dramatic way possible, and that voice became a rallying cry for anyone who had ever been told they were helpless. Maya Chun's story reminded the world that true warriors were often found in the most unexpected places, and that underestimating someone based on their appearance could be the most dangerous mistake of all. Years later, when Maya spoke at conferences and schools about her experience, she always emphasized that the physical techniques she had used were far less important than the mental preparation and emotional strength that had made her victory possible. Real empowerment came from understanding your own worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it, regardless of their wealth, status, or perceived power. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.